If there's one thing you learn tending bar on the edge of other people's secrets, it's not to ask questions you don't want the answer to. I clocked out just past 2, the kind of hour when only trouble and broken hearts wander beneath city lamps. My apron still clung to the faint sweet tang of whiskey and spilled cola after a 10-hour shift, but exhaustion barely registered. Survival instincts had replaced fatigue for weeks now. I didn't linger to say goodbye. If Nina had been working, I might have stalled, let her walk with me toward our cars parked as close to the club's back exit as possible. But tonight she was off. I folded my tip money into my shoe, held my keys between my fingers, and hurried into the brittle chill outside. The Crimson Lounge's back parking lot looked emptier than ever. My battered sedan waited near the only functioning lamp, and every inch of darkness felt sharper than it should. As I moved, I focused on the rhythm. Step, step, scan, breathe. Only as I reached for the handle did I realize a figure stood beside the driver's door. At first, the silhouette leaned casual, arms crossed, one foot scuffed against the tire. But all sense of casual evaporated the moment he straightened and turned toward me. "Long night, Ava?" Tyler's voice crept under my skin, familiar and cold. I kept my distance, cold air biting between us. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not bothering to conceal my irritation, or the thread of panic running under it. He smiled, all shallow charm pressed over something ugly. "Needed to talk. You haven't exactly answered my calls. I changed my number for a reason. Leave." I dug in my bag, ready with the can of pepper spray, praying my hands wouldn't shake enough to drop it. "I just want to talk, that's all," he said, raising palm outward, mocking a peace gesture. "Don't make a scene." It would have been laughable if he hadn't still held my apartment keys on his ring, remnants of when I trusted him. I kept my shoulders back, glancing left and right for witnesses. Of course, at this hour, my best hope was for street cameras and luck. There's nothing to say. "You're drunk. Go home." He took a step closer. "Don't walk away from me." The words came weighted with old ritual. All those nights his temper flashed right before laughter pulled me back in. I remembered the bruises hidden under sweaters, the apology bouquets, the threats that sounded like jokes until they weren't. I shifted my grip on the canister. "I'm not your girlfriend. I'm not your anything." That changed everything. His mask dropped, a flash of rage, stark as headlights on a dark road. "You're coming with me. I don't care how many of your friends you run to." He grabbed my elbow, hard enough to hurt. All my rehearsed responses tangled. I yanked free and sprayed, a clumsy arch that still hit his cheek and eyes. He cursed, stumbling back, and I darted past him, plastic flats skidding on slick asphalt. Behind me, I heard him howl my name and fumble with his own car door. My own car was out of reach, so I bolted for the alley, cutting through puddles and sheets of icy rain. I ran blind, arms crossed against the downpour, lungs burning, not daring to look behind. Rain blurred neon signs into shaky streaks. The shouts faded, and my breath fogged in the air as I sprinted beneath the old canal bridge, feeling the city's pulse change under my feet. I didn't know where I was running until I saw the battered brick warehouse with a single light burning in an upstairs window. The neighborhood felt unfamiliar. Blocky industrial spaces, barbed wire curling atop fences, smell of oil and damp concrete. It was cross territory, whispered about in the club. Not the kind of place you entered without an invitation, unless terror overruled caution. I pounded on the metal side door, adrenaline outpacing any fear of who might answer. A broad-shouldered man in a dark jacket peered out, face creased with suspicion. "I need help," I gasped, spotting his gun holstered under the coat. "My ex is... Please, he's a cop, he'll kill me. Just let me hide." He started to shove me back, but the commotion drew voices from inside. Uneven steps echoed down a staircase. Then a second man appeared, not as burly, but commanding in presence, every line of his posture barking authority even in silence. Brown eyes swept over me, taking in everything. Drenched hair, blood on my sleeve, the wild desperation stealing my breath. "Let her in," he ordered, deep voice nearly calm. The guard hesitated, but stepped aside. I stumbled inside, leaving muddy prints across a concrete floor. Soft amber light glowed over steel desks and battered chairs. The second man watched me, unmoved by my panic, waiting for any lie. "Who's after you?" "My ex. Detective Tyler Brennan." My chest heaved. "He's outside." Through the small front window, headlights swung wild across a row of dumpsters. Doors slammed. Tyler's voice carried, more a threat than a call. "Ava, come here now." The second man nodded to the guard, who moved to intercept. "Stay behind me," he told me, his stare impossible to meet for long. He smelled faintly of clean soap and something darker, but his eyes remained measured, not cruel. Tyler reached the door, badge out, demanding I be handed over. "You're obstructing police business. That woman assaulted an officer." The man at my side didn't falter. "Try again." "You threaten her again, you answer to me. And you've picked the wrong night for corruption, Detective Brennan." Tyler looked him over, recognition flickering with something almost like fear, drowned out by humiliation. "You think you can hide her? I'll have your place raided in an hour." "Leave my property," the man said, tone final. "Come back, and you'll find out who the law listens to around here." It was a contest of wills, odd and electric. Eventually, Tyler spat on the concrete and retreated, tires shrieking as he sped off into the night, but not before shouting promises to ruin both of us. Slumped against the wall, I tried to slow my breathing as the stranger studied me. "Name?" "Ava." My lips trembled. "I'm not lying." He's not going to stop. The steel of his jaw softened, just a fraction. "I'm Julian Cross. You're safe here tonight. Victor, lock up. I'll decide what comes next." A handful of heartbeats later, I was bundled into a black sedan, fatigue swallowing me whole as city streets blurred past. Victor rode in the front, Julian behind the wheel, silent except for brief instructions to security. I cradled my hands together on my knees, mind racing with questions. Who exactly was I trusting? How had one desperate sprint in the rain rewritten my entire future? At the safe house, a sleek bundle of glass and dark wood overlooking the downtown skyline, I was ushered into a softly lit guest room with fresh towels and a glass of water by the bed. Victor handed me a phone. "You call anyone besides your friend, or try to run, and we'll know. But you're not our prisoner. Get some rest. Julian will talk to you in the morning." I tried, but sleep only arrived in broken pieces, shattered by nightmares of hands grabbing, voices shouting, faces that once meant comfort, now twisted into threat. First light brought no relief, just awareness that my choices had vanished. That in a single night, the world had tipped, and I was left scrambling to find my balance. When I woke again, it was to muted voices outside my door, the scent of coffee, and an uncertainty that burned more hotly than any bruise Tyler ever gave me. I stared out at the waking city, not sure if I'd really been rescued or stepped into a new kind of danger, one that wore its power differently, but just as visibly. The morning inside Julian Cross's safe house landed somewhere between sterile and luxurious, like a hotel designed by someone who valued marble floors over comfort. I lay still, reading every sound. Footsteps muted on polished wood, distant voices clipped and careful. It took real effort to pry myself upright, jaw clenched as old aches fired through my limbs. My borrowed clothes had come from somewhere in the building, too neat for me, but cleverly baggy enough to hide how much I shook. Victor, the older man who'd driven, kept an eye on me through the open doorway. "There's coffee and food in the kitchen," he said, keeping his tone mild but not quite warm. From the way his gaze sharpened as I moved, I suspected he was cataloging weaknesses, not offering comfort. I followed anyway, muscle memory from the bar guiding me toward caffeine more than curiosity. The kitchen was broad, sunlight filtered through frosted glass, gleaming appliances barely touched. I braced both hands around a mug as Victor poured coffee. "Julian will be here soon. He asked that you stay inside. You expect me to do as asked just because he gave me shelter?" My voice landed a little harsher than I intended. Victor shrugged. "Might be wise for now." Nearly every instinct rebelled. I needed work, money, normal life. My phone, now confiscated and replaced with a burner, buzzed on the counter, displaying a string of missed calls from Nina's number, and another marked unknown. Anxiety slipped between my ribs as I drank. Julian entered after a few minutes, dark suit tailored precisely for his broad shoulders. He didn't smile, didn't try to reassure. "Let's discuss why you're really here." "I told you." Tyler went off the deep end. I replied, "I couldn't go to the police. And now I'm stuck in your sanctuary?" His jaw flexed. He slid a thin folder across the breakfast bar. "All court documents and printouts. Tyler filed charges against you this morning, after being caught on your club's cameras. He fabricated injuries and got a judge to sign a warrant." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Of course he did. Cops cover for each other." Julian nodded at Victor, who reached for another set of papers. "Our lawyer is working to get it thrown out. But until the order is gone and he's put on administrative leave, you shouldn't leave here. Not even for work." "I'm not your prisoner." I slammed the mug down, liquid sloshing over my hand. "I need my job. Rent is due in 4 days. My life keeps moving. Even if the rest of yours run on power and fear." Julian's gaze held steady, making it clear that neither my anger nor desperation would move him easily. "If you leave now, Tyler won't hesitate to escalate. We watched his footage from last night. He has no intention of keeping this quiet." I sank onto a stool, fingers running across my temples. "How much is this going to cost me?" His expression never flickered. Only Victor barked out a dry laugh. "Julian isn't the sort to send invoices. He deals with debts differently." The day stretched. Every time I paced the hallway, Victor appeared, politely shadowing but never speaking unless necessary. Hours disappeared as I attempted to imagine a way out. My head throbbed from too little sleep and too much uncertainty. I tried calling Nina, but she answered in hurried whispers. Tyler had messaged her, tracking her commute, hinting at some terrible accident if I didn't back down. Her voice shook on the line. That was the kind of threat that made sense only if he believed he still held power. Julian reappeared near noon with 2 more men and a younger woman in business casual attire. Their lawyer, I guessed. She offered a brisk update. "Tyler made several false statements, but there's enough evidence on your club's security tapes and your medical file to contest the charges. We need about 2 weeks. Can you stay put?" I pressed my lips tight and nodded, not trusting myself to say anything gracious. If I thought long enough about rent and groceries, worry curled in circles under my ribs. Once the lawyer departed, Julian gestured at a laptop open on the counter. "We run several restaurants and legitimate delivery companies. I need help reviewing receipts and invoices. You have the time." He didn't ask, didn't phrase it as charity. I understood that much. Numbers had always made sense to me. Patterns, discrepancies. I started cross-checking orders, noting issues in supplier paperwork. He watched from the living room, silent except for an occasional query, always professional. Hours passed. I was grateful for the distraction, even if my mind raced with the uncertainty of what would happen next. By evening, I'd spotted 3 irregularities in Cross Transport's accounts. Victor leaned over my shoulder, eyebrow raised. "You really catch small details." Julian nodded once, a gesture of approval that felt almost alien in its restraint. Conversation mixed with efficiency, questions about spreadsheet codes, gentle guidance on data security. Sometimes we brushed past each other in the narrow kitchen. My shoulder grazed his. Each time warm awareness pulsed. Quick, unspoken, ignored. That night as I sat in bed, Nina called again, this time voice frayed to the edge. "Tyler found out where I stay. I saw him at the garage when I left work. Ava, what did you get mixed up in?" "I'm so sorry." My voice barely above breath. "Julian's offering you protection. You need to say yes." A pause. Then her reluctant agreement. Sleep never came easy again in that place. Security schedules rotated downstairs, shoes thudding on marble. I tried to read but kept coming back to what I couldn't control. Morning arrived dull and anxious, with Victor arriving to escort me to breakfast. He handed over more files. "Julian wants your input." Through the next few days, routine settled in with relentless precision. Work, check-ins with Nina, guarded walks through the penthouse. Sometimes I'd catch Julian watching me, eyes taut, as if parsing more than my skills with a balance sheet. One evening, as I finished a batch of invoices, he lingered nearby. "You don't trust easily," he observed. I spun the chair. "Neither do you." Instead of bristling, he shrugged. "Experience teaches caution. Anyone who walks through my door at 2 a.m. deserves answers. What made you run to us, not the cops?" The question hung, sharper than accusation. I told him what I couldn't tell anyone else. The way Tyler twisted law, how men who looked like friends became threats overnight. Julian nodded slowly, not offering comfort, but understanding. Over days, something shifted. Less fear, more awareness. Julian's restraint became less menacing and more reassuring. At dinner, he asked questions about my family, about college, the years lost in foster care after my parents' accident. I found myself answering, bit by bit, even though the words caught. One night, I asked directly, "Why did you help me?" His eyes met mine. "Tyler's name crossed my desk months ago. He's not only dangerous to you. Corruption bleeds through this city. Sometimes men like him need to be stopped, if only to keep order among the chaos." I digested his logic, understanding the uneasy morality of protection when justice had failed through official channels. It was hard to keep seeing him as just another criminal after that. On the 5th night, Victor interrupted our dinner to announce Nina had been followed from her hospital shift by a driver matching Tyler's car. Julian listened, then told Victor, "Bring her here. No delays." Within a few hours, Nina arrived, breathless and pale, carrying her nurse's bag and too many questions. She hugged me fiercely, eyes darting to Julian and Victor. "What have you gotten us into?" she hissed. Julian gave them both instructions about security. 2 men with Nina at all times, alternate exits from the building, frequent check-ins. He offered no room for negotiation. I could see Nina's nerves steady as she listened. Her usual brightness dimmed, but not extinguished. Working became a refuge. Most days I checked receipts and emails, relaying issues to Victor, passing reports to Julian. Meals together began resembling something tentatively normal. I learned how the cross operations ran. Not just violence, but negotiation. Quiet outreach to keep peace through calculated shows of strength. The more I understood, the more my black and white view faded to uncertainty. Outside, autumn bit harder. Tyler remained a threat, undeterred by legal delays. I received texts, emails, phone calls from blocked numbers. "This can end if you just come back." I deleted them, showing Nina once for proof. Through all the tension, I recognized something else. Julian's presence brought an odd sense of safety I wasn't sure I liked, as if danger outside made his control inside feel like shelter instead of a cage. In slower moments, when we sat drinking coffee as sunlight faded, I almost forgot my world had upended. By week's end, the lawyer returned, explaining the evidence would likely dismiss Tyler's charges, but cautioning it could take up to 2 more weeks. Julian promised continued protection, even as I bristled at the restrictions. He wasn't angry at my resistance, just firm, unwilling to bend where safety was concerned. One evening, as I finished sorting invoices, Victor remarked, "Julian doesn't let many people see this side. You do good work." For the first time, I thanked him sincerely. It wasn't gratitude for rescue. It was relief at being seen as capable, not just draggable from trouble. On the final night of that week, after a dinner marked by cautious optimism and tired laughter between me and Nina, I wandered onto the balcony. The city stretched black and bright beneath me, cars streaming along the river. Julian joined me, hands folded on the railing, gaze taking everything in. "He'll keep pushing," I said quietly. "That's who Tyler is." Julian nodded. "We're ready for him, but only if you agree to play by our rules." I studied him in the silvered dark, seeing the man who had saved me for reasons that weren't simply transactional. "Then tell me what you need. I'm done hiding." He said nothing, but the air between us felt changed. The start of something neither of us would name, not yet. The city below carried on, indistinct, alive, and we remained above it, uncertain but never waiting idly for what came next. Nina spent the first morning in Julian's safe house pacing between the kitchen and the living room, like someone testing the boundaries of a cage. She kept glancing at the guards posted near the entrance. their quiet vigilance both comforting and unnerving. I understood the conflict, grateful for protection, resentful of needing it. "This is insane," she muttered, pouring her third cup of coffee. Tyler showed up at the hospital pretending to have chest pain. He asked the intake nurse which shift I worked. When I saw him in the waiting area, I called security and ran. I squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry. This is my fault." She shook her head, curls bouncing. "Tyler's fault. Don't take that on yourself." But her eyes told a different story. Worry lines creasing her forehead. Exhaustion pulling at the corners of her mouth. Victor appeared with folders under one arm, glancing between us. "Julian wants an update on the Brennan situation. New intel came through overnight. We followed him into the study, a room I'd barely entered before. Dark wood paneling, shelves lined with legal texts and historical volumes. A desk that looked like it belonged in a government building. Julian stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, finishing a terse conversation in clipped phrases. When he hung up, his expression was grimmer than usual. "Tyler's made contact with the Sawyer family," he said without preamble, offering them access to police surveillance routes and schedules in exchange for leverage against us. Nina's confusion was immediate. "Who are the Sawyers?" "Competition," Victor supplied. "They control the South Docks and have been trying to expand into cross-territory for years. Tyler just gave them an opening." I felt the floor tilt slightly. "So this isn't just about me anymore." Julian's gaze found mine. "It stopped being just about you the moment he involved the Sawyers. This is territorial now, which means it gets handled differently." The weight of those words settled heavy. I'd dragged not just myself but everyone around me into something larger, messier. "What do we do?" "You stay here. Let us manage Tyler and the Sawyers." Julian's tone left no room for argument. But I'd never been good at accepting orders without question. "I can't just hide while you fight battles I started." His jaw tightened. "You didn't start this." "Tyler did. The moment he decided obsession mattered more than law." Nina watched us both. Her nurse's instinct for reading tension evident in how carefully she stayed silent. Finally, she spoke. "How long do we wait?" 2 weeks? Maybe less," Victor answered. "The legal case against Ava is crumbling. Tyler knows it. That's why he's desperate." Days blurred into routines. Nina adapted faster than I expected, charming the security team with her quick humor and genuine interest in their lives. I caught her laughing with one of the younger guards, a broad-shouldered man named Marco, who blushed whenever she spoke to him. It was strange seeing normalcy bloom in such abnormal circumstances. Work kept me grounded. Julian brought me deeper into the operations, not the illegal side, but the logistics of legitimate businesses that needed oversight. I found discrepancies in shipping manifests, flagged invoicing errors, even caught a vendor inflating prices. Each discovery earned a nod from Julian, sometimes a quiet "well done" that felt more valuable than it should. Our conversations grew longer, stretching past professional necessity into something else. Over late dinners, when Nina had retreated to her room, Julian told me about inheriting the family business at 23 after his father was killed in a deal gone wrong. "I didn't want this life," he admitted one night, exhaustion softening his usual control. But walking away meant letting everything collapse. Too many people depended on the structure we'd built. "Do you regret it?" I asked. He considered the question. "Every day. And never." I understood that contradiction better than I wanted to admit. Some choices aren't about desire. They're about survival, responsibility, the weight of what happens if you don't step up. One evening, guilt pressed too hard against my ribs. I waited until Victor left for a security check, then slipped toward the elevator. My plan was simple, reckless. Meet Tyler somewhere public, end this without dragging anyone else deeper. Maybe if I agreed to talk, to negotiate, he'd back off. The elevator doors opened before I reached them. Julian stepped out, eyes locking onto mine with immediate understanding. "Where are you going?" I lifted my chin. "To fix this." "By doing what, exactly?" "Walking into Tyler's trap." His voice stayed level, but anger simmered beneath. "By stopping you from getting hurt because of me." The words came out fiercer than intended. He closed the distance between us, presence overwhelming in the narrow hallway. "You think sacrificing yourself helps anyone?" "It doesn't. It just gives him exactly what he wants. And what do you want? I shot back. To keep me locked up here like some possession you need to protect. The accusation landed wrong the moment it left my mouth, echoing too much of Tyler's language. Julian's expression shifted. Not wounded, but understanding in a way that disarmed me completely. I want you alive, he said quietly. I want you safe. Not because you're mine, but because walking away and letting him destroy you isn't something I'm willing to do. The space between us felt charged, dangerous. I don't know who moved first. Maybe both of us. Instinct overriding sense. His mouth found mine, urgent and searching, hands framing my face with unexpected gentleness. I kissed him back, pouring weeks of fear and frustration and something else I couldn't name into the contact. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back. This complicates things, I managed. It was already complicated, Julian replied, voice rough. We stood there, inches apart, neither moving away. The elevator chimed, breaking the moment. Victor emerged, took one look at us, and simply said, "The lawyer called. Charges are being dropped tomorrow." Internal Affairs opened an investigation into Tyler. Relief flooded through me, though it felt incomplete. "That's good news," Victor nodded. "It also makes him more dangerous. Men with nothing to lose take risks." Over the next few days, tension mounted. Julian received reports of Sawyer operatives near cross businesses, small provocations testing boundaries. One of their trucks blocked a delivery route. A warehouse was vandalized with Sawyer tags. Julian responded with calculated moves, cutting off their access to import channels, quietly buying out a supplier they relied on. Nina noticed my distraction. Late one night, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You kissed him." It wasn't a question. I started to deny it, then gave up. "Yeah, and I don't know what it means. Everything's so tangled right now." She studied me with that particular intensity she reserved for patients hiding symptoms. "You're allowed to want something good, even when everything else is chaos. Maybe especially then." Her words stayed with me. That night, lying awake, I replayed the kiss, the way Julian looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching, the careful distance he'd maintained since. Neither of us had addressed it directly, but awareness hummed constant between us. The situation with Tyler escalated when Marco intercepted a message on Nina's old phone, threats detailing exactly where she'd be and what Tyler would do. Julian immediately doubled security, his control slipping just enough for me to see genuine fear underneath. "He's unraveling," Victor observed during a tense meeting. Unpredictable. Julian's plan was methodical. Pressure Tyler legally, isolate him from the Sawyers by making the alliance costly, wait for him to make a mistake. But waiting felt impossible when every day brought new threats. On the 8th night, Julian found me on the balcony again, city lights spreading below like scattered diamonds. "The lawyer says charges will be formally dismissed by the end of the week," he said, leaning against the railing beside me. "Then I can leave." "You can. But should you?" I turned to face him. "What are you really asking?" He met my gaze directly. "I'm asking if you want to stay. Not because you have to, but because you choose to." The honesty in his voice cut through every defense I'd carefully constructed. "I don't know what I want anymore. A month ago, my life was simple. Now I'm hiding in a penthouse with a man who terrifies and fascinates me in equal measure. I don't want to terrify you," he said quietly. "Then stop making decisions for me. Stop treating me like I'm fragile." The frustration I'd been swallowing spilled over. "You saved me, and I'm grateful. But gratitude isn't partnership. If this," I gestured between us, "is real, then treat me like I have agency." Julian was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "You're right. I've been protecting you the way I know how, but that doesn't mean it's what you need." The admission felt like a door opening. "So what happens next?" "We figure it out together," he offered. "No more unilateral decisions." It wasn't a promise of romance or safety, just honesty, which somehow mattered more. I reached for his hand, fingers threading through his. He held on, neither of us speaking, just standing in the dark while the city breathed below. When we went back inside, Nina was asleep on the couch, medical journal open across her chest. Marco had draped a blanket over her shoulders, expression soft with obvious affection. Julian smiled faintly at the sight. "She's good for him," he murmured. "Makes him remember there's more than work and loyalty." "What about you?" I asked. "What makes you remember?" He looked at me, really looked, and I saw past the control to something raw underneath. "You do." The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I didn't know how to respond, so I just squeezed his hand once more before retreating to my room. Sleep came easier that night, though my dreams were vivid. Tyler's face twisted in rage, Julian's steady presence, the uncertain future stretching ahead. By morning, Victor delivered news that changed everything. Tyler had disappeared for 2 days. An informant suggested he was planning something major with direct Sawyer's support. The war was no longer cold. It was about to ignite, and I stood at the center whether I wanted to or not. Julian proposed the idea over breakfast, his tone measured but his gaze intense. A contract marriage, temporary, legal protection that Tyler can't challenge without exposing himself further. I nearly choked on my coffee. "You're joking." "I'm not." He slid a handwritten outline across the table. "As my wife, you'd have the full weight of the cross name behind you. Tyler loses any legal claim. After 6 months, we quietly annul. You're free." Nina, who'd been listening from the doorway, whistled low. "That's either brilliant or insane." I stared at the paper, mind racing through implications. Marriage, even fake, meant entanglement I'd sworn to avoid after Tyler. But the alternative was waiting for him to strike again, hoping the law would protect me when it had already failed. "What's in it for you?" Julian leaned back, considering. "Tyler allied with the Sawyers. That makes this bigger than one man's obsession. A marriage sends a message. You're untouchable, and anyone coming after you answers to me. It stabilizes the situation. So, I'm a strategic move." His jaw tightened. "You're someone I'm choosing to protect. The strategy is just how we make it work." Victor entered with his usual impeccable timing. "The lawyer says it's legally sound. Fast civil ceremony, file the papers. Done. Tyler can't contest it without admitting his harassment." I looked between them all, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down. "I need conditions. We sleep in separate rooms. This stays professional. And when 6 months are up, we walk away clean." Julian nodded without hesitation. "Agreed. Then I'll do it." The words came out steadier than I felt. 2 days later, we stood in a courthouse that smelled like old paper and floor wax. Victor and Nina as our only witnesses. The ceremony lasted 8 minutes. The officiant, a tired woman with reading glasses on a chain, recited vows we repeated mechanically, when Julian slipped a simple silver band onto my finger. His touch lingered just a moment longer than necessary. "You may kiss the bride." Julian's eyes asked permission. I nodded once, and he kissed me. Brief, chaste, nothing like the one in the hallway, but the contact still sent electricity down my spine. Nina hugged me afterward, whispering, "For what it's worth, you two make sense in a weird way." The move to Julian's main residence happened that afternoon. The mansion sat in an exclusive neighborhood, 3 stories of old money and careful renovations. Staff moved through hallways with practiced invisibility. My room was in the east wing, spacious and impersonal, decorated in neutral tones that revealed nothing about who lived there. Julian gave me a brief tour, pointing out his office, the library, the garden that wrapped around the back. "Most of the staff know the marriage is strategic," he said. "They're discreet. Your privacy is safe here, except I'll be living with you." The reality settled heavy. "We'll figure it out," he replied, echoing his earlier promise. The first week was awkward navigation, learning routines, avoiding each other during vulnerable moments, maintaining the fiction for anyone outside the inner circle. Dinners were the hardest. Sitting across from Julian, making small talk while tension hummed beneath every word, felt like performance art. But gradually, we fell into rhythm. He asked about my day's work, genuinely interested in the financial patterns I'd uncovered. I asked about his meetings, learning the delicate balance he maintained between legitimate business and the darker edges of his empire. Conversations stretched longer, laughter came easier, and the distance we'd carefully maintained started feeling more like a formality than necessity. One evening, I found him in the library, surrounded by ledgers and maps. "The Sawyers hit one of our smaller warehouses last night," he said without looking up. "Burned it. No casualties, but the message is clear." I sat across from him. "What's your next move? Cut off their supplier in Philadelphia. They can't operate without product." He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion evident. "This escalates. People get hurt. I'm trying to keep it contained." "Why do you care?" The question came out more genuine than challenging. He looked up, surprise flickering across his features. "Because I'm responsible for everyone under my protection. That's hundreds of people. Drivers, dock workers, restaurant staff. If I start a war, they suffer." It was the same answer he'd given before, but hearing it again, seeing the weight he carried, made it real. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you." He closed the ledger. "Most people would have run the moment the charges dropped. I signed a contract," I said lightly, but we both knew it was more than that. The nights were harder. Lying awake in my room, I'd hear Julian moving through the house, footsteps echoing on hardwood. Sometimes I wondered if he struggled with sleep the same way I did, if the space between our rooms felt as charged to him as it did to me. Nina noticed, of course. She'd started spending more time with Marco, their relationship evolving from flirtation to something genuine. One afternoon, she cornered me in the garden. "You're falling for him. It's complicated." "It's always complicated with you," she laughed. "But that doesn't make it less real." I wanted to argue, but couldn't. The truth was, Julian had become more than the man who'd saved me. He challenged me, respected my intelligence, made space for my anger without trying to fix it. And somewhere in the routine of shared meals and late-night conversations, I'd started seeing a future that extended past 6 months. The shift happened on a quiet Tuesday. I was reviewing shipping manifests when Julian appeared, tension radiating from every line of his body. "Tyler showed up at the gates an hour ago. Drunk. Shouting." My blood went cold. "What did he say?" "That you'd stolen his life. That I'd manipulated you." Julian's voice stayed controlled, but fury simmered underneath. "Security removed him. But he'll be back." I stood, nausea rising. I should have known he wouldn't accept this. Julian crossed to me, hands gripping my shoulders gently. "This isn't your fault. He's unhinged, and the Sawyers are using him as a pawn. I hate this," I whispered, "hiding behind walls and security while he destroys everything." "You're not hiding. You're surviving." His thumbs brushed against my collarbone, grounding. "There's a difference." The contact between us felt different this time. Less comfort, more awareness. His eyes searched mine, asking a question neither of us had dared voice. I leaned forward, closing the distance, and kissed him. This wasn't strategy or impulse. It was choice. His response was immediate, arms wrapping around my waist, pulling me closer. The kiss deepened, weeks of restraint unraveling in heated breath and desperate touches. When we finally broke apart, both shaking, the world had tilted on its axis. "We said professional," I managed. "We lied," he replied, voice rough. That night, separate rooms felt like a cruelty we'd inflicted on ourselves. I lay awake, replaying every moment, every word. Around midnight, a soft knock echoed on my door. Julian stood in the hallway, expression uncertain in a way I'd never seen. "I can't sleep," he admitted. "Neither can I." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. We talked for hours, about fear and trust, about the impossible situation we'd created, about wanting something real in the middle of chaos. When dawn broke, he was still there, fingers tangled with mine, both of us finally at peace. The days that followed brought new complications. Julian became visibly more protective, his control slipping just enough to show genuine fear whenever Tyler's name surfaced. I pushed back, reminding him of our agreement to make decisions together. It created friction, but also deepened our connection, learning to navigate partnership when neither of us had practiced it before. Victor delivered troubling news during breakfast one morning. "Tyler's planning something big. He's been meeting with Sawyer's top lieutenants, offering federal contact information." "Federal?" I repeated. "Like FBI?" Julian's expression darkened. He's trying to trade information for immunity. If he succeeds, he takes down the Sawyers and us simultaneously. The implications hit hard. Julian could face serious charges. The business could collapse. Everyone depending on him would suffer. What do we do? We move first, Victor said, carefully. But Julian was looking at me, conflict clear in his eyes. I need to tell you something. I wasn't trying to protect you, but that's not fair. He explained Tyler's full plan, using me as bait to force a recorded confession, delivering evidence to federal agents who'd promised leniency. The betrayal of secrecy stung worse than the danger itself. You were going to hide this from me? My voice came out colder than intended. You thought wrong. I stood, chair scraping. This is exactly what Tyler did. Deciding what I could handle, keeping me in the dark for my own good. Julian flinched like I'd struck him. You're right. I'm sorry. The apology disarmed me. But anger still burned. If we're doing this, really doing this, you have to trust me with the truth. All of it. Then here's the truth, he said quietly. I'm terrified of losing you. It makes me want to lock you away where nothing can touch you. But I know that's wrong. The raw admission shifted everything. I sat back down, reaching for his hand. I'm scared too, but I'd rather face it with you than be protected from it. We strategized together. My idea was risky. Use myself as bait deliberately, but on our terms. Meet Tyler publicly, wire myself. Let him reveal his plans while Victor worked another angle with federal contacts. Julian hated it, but couldn't offer a better alternative that didn't involve more violence. If anything goes wrong, he started. It won't, I interrupted, because we'll plan this perfectly. Nina's pregnancy news came that evening, delivered with nervous excitement. Marco stood beside her, protective hand on her shoulder. It added urgency to everything. Resolve this fast, end it clean, let people start building normal lives. The night before the planned meeting, Julian and I sat in his study long after Victor left. I meant what I said at the courthouse, he told me, about this being temporary. My heart stuttered. And now I want to renegotiate. His hand found mine. This marriage started as strategy, but somewhere along the way it became real for me. You became real. I leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. For me, too. Then let's end this with Tyler, he murmured against my hair, and figure out what comes after. I agreed, though uncertainty still gnawed at me. Tomorrow would determine everything, freedom or disaster. But tonight, wrapped in Julian's arms, I chose to believe we'd find our way through. Morning arrived with the kind of clarity that makes everything feel too sharp, too real. I dressed carefully. Olive blouse, jeans, nothing that would draw attention. The wire Victor fitted against my ribs was smaller than I expected. A tiny microphone that transmitted to receivers positioned throughout the downtown cafe we'd chosen. My hands shook as he adjusted the device. You don't have to do this, Julian said for the third time, standing near the bedroom door with arms crossed. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, evidence he'd slept as poorly as I had. Yes, I do. I met his gaze in the mirror. Tyler won't stop until he's forced to. This ends today. Victor handed me an earpiece, nearly invisible once tucked into place. We'll hear everything. Marco and 2 others will be inside as customers. Julian and I will be in the van across the street. Any sign of trouble, we extract you immediately. Julian moved closer, fingers brushing my cheek. The moment it feels wrong, you walk away. Promise me. I promise. I turned into his touch, drawing strength from the contact. But I can do this. I need to do this. The cafe occupied a corner building in the business district. Large windows overlooking busy sidewalks, multiple exits as we'd planned. Morning commuters filled the tables, creating the public atmosphere Tyler would trust. I arrived first, choosing a spot with clear sightlines. Ordering coffee I had no intention of drinking. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat feeling loud enough to drown out the ambient noise. Tyler walked in exactly on time, and the sight of him sent ice through my veins. He'd cleaned himself up, freshly shaved, wearing a button-down that almost made him look respectable. but his eyes carried that familiar intensity, the obsessive focus that had turned love into possession. Ava. He slid into the seat across from me, manufactured warmth in his voice. I'm glad you agreed to meet. I was starting to think you'd forgotten everything we meant to each other. I forced my expression neutral. You said you wanted to talk. So talk. He leaned back, studying me with unsettling attention. You look different. Marriage to Cross suits you, I guess. Though we both know that's not real. It's legal, I replied evenly, which makes it real where it matters. His jaw tightened briefly before the false charm returned. Right. Legal. About that, I've been doing some thinking. Cross is dangerous, Ava. He's going down, and you'll go with him unless you're smart. Dangerous how? I kept my voice curious, not challenging. Tyler glanced around, confirming no one seemed interested in our conversation. He runs half the illegal operations in this city. Smuggling, extortion, violence. The FBI has been building a case for months. I've been helping them. My stomach dropped despite knowing this was coming. Helping them how? Giving them evidence, testimony, access. He leaned forward, dropping his voice. I can protect you, get you immunity too. But you have to cooperate. Tell them what you've seen living in his house. Why would you help me after everything? I asked, genuinely curious about his delusion. His expression shifted, revealing the possessiveness he'd barely concealed. Because you're mine, Ava. You always were. Cross manipulated you, used your fear of me to control you. I see that now. Once he's gone, things can go back to how they should be. The casual certainty in his voice made my skin crawl. I'm not yours. I never was. I was a person you dated, then abused. Anger flashed across his face before he controlled it. I made mistakes. I'll admit that. But I've changed. The therapy, the work I've done. I understand now what went wrong. What went wrong? I said slowly, is that you hurt me. Repeatedly. Then stalked me when I left. I was fighting for us. His voice rose slightly before he caught himself, smoothing back into false reason. Look, this isn't about our past. It's about your future. Help me take down Cross. Testify about what you've witnessed and the FBI protects you. We both walk away clean. I pretended to consider it, watching calculations move behind his eyes. And if I don't? Tyler's mask slipped further. Then you're complicit in everything he's done. When the raids happen, and they will, you'll be arrested alongside him. Is that what you want? Prison because you were too proud to accept help? Help, I repeated. Is that what this is? Yes. He reached across the table, grabbing my hand before I could pull away. His grip hurt, familiar pressure that triggered every defensive instinct. I still care about you. Despite everything, I want you safe. I yanked free, cradling my hand. You have a strange way of showing care. His expression darkened completely now, pretense crumbling. You think Cross is better? He's a criminal, Ava. Everything he touches is corrupt. That marriage you're so proud of? It's just another way he's using you. At least he asked first, I shot back. You just took. Tyler's control shattered. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a vicious whisper. You self-righteous. You have no idea what you've cost me. My career is destroyed because of your accusations. The department thinks I'm dirty. So yeah, taking down Cross became personal. He took you. He ruined my reputation. And now I'm going to destroy everything he's built. There it is, I said quietly. The truth. This was never about protecting me or justice. It's revenge. Call it whatever you want. He pulled out his phone, showing me what looked like official documents. The FBI moves next week. They'll raid every Cross property, freeze every account. And when they ask me about you, I'll tell them exactly how involved you've been, unless you cooperate now. I stared at the documents, recognizing names and addresses. You're really going through with this. I already have. The Sawyers helped fill in gaps, shipping routes, money laundering operations. In exchange, they get immunity for their testimony too. It's all arranged. He pocketed the phone, satisfaction clear. Cross is finished. The only question is whether you go down with him. My earpiece crackled softly. Victor's voice barely audible. "We have everything. Hold position." "I need time to think," I told Tyler, standing slowly. He grabbed my wrist, yanking me back down. "No more time. You decide now, or I walk out and let you burn with him." "Tyler, you're hurting me." I kept my voice level despite pain shooting up my arm. "Answer me." His grip tightened. Around us, a few customers glanced over, awareness growing that something was wrong. The cafe door opened. Federal agents and windbreakers moved in coordinated precision, spreading throughout the space. Tyler's confusion was instant, grip loosening as he registered what was happening. "Detective Tyler Brennan," the lead agent announced, approaching our table. "You're under arrest for corruption, conspiracy, and providing false testimony to federal agents." Tyler's face went white. "What?" "No, I'm working with you. I gave you You gave us fabricated evidence and coordinated with known criminals." The agent pulled Tyler to his feet, producing handcuffs. "We've been investigating your relationship with the Sawyer organization for 3 months. This meeting just gave us everything we needed." As they read him his rights, Tyler's eyes locked onto mine. Realization dawning. "You set me up. I recorded you confessing to conspiracy." I corrected. "There's a difference." Victor appeared at my side, hand on my shoulder. "We need to go." I nodded, legs unsteady as adrenaline drained away. Tyler shouted after me, threats and accusations that dissolved into the noise of the cafe as agents led him outside. Through the window, I saw Julian emerging from the surveillance van, relief stark on his face. He met me on the sidewalk, pulling me into an embrace that felt like the first real breath I'd taken in hours. "It's over," he murmured against my hair. "You did it." "We did it," I corrected, clinging to him. Victor explained as we drove back to the mansion. The FBI had never fully trusted Tyler's testimony, recognizing his personal vendetta. When Victor approached them weeks ago with documentation of Tyler's collaboration with the Sawyers, a criminal organization they'd been targeting for years, they agreed to a controlled operation. Tyler's confession today, combined with evidence Victor provided, was exactly what they needed to arrest him and move against the Sawyers simultaneously. "What about Julian?" I asked. "The charges Tyler mentioned?" "Largely fabricated," Victor said. "There will be scrutiny, but nothing that can't be managed with the right legal team." Tyler lied to make himself seem more valuable. At the mansion, Nina was waiting on the front steps, Marco beside her. She hugged me fiercely. "Never do that again." "Deal." I laughed shakily, relief making me lightheaded. The following days brought waves of developments. Tyler faced multiple federal and state charges. The Sawyers organization fractured as leadership was arrested, their territory falling to smaller operations that lacked coordination to threaten Julian's control. The legal scrutiny of cross-businesses proved minimal. Tyler's evidence had been so tainted by his obvious bias and criminal behavior that prosecutors dismissed most of it. But the real shift came internally. Julian began restructuring operations, using the crisis as justification to legitimize more of the business. "I wanted this for years," he admitted one evening as we reviewed transition plans. "But the old guard resisted change. Now they understand adaptation isn't optional." I watched him work with new appreciation. This wasn't just survival. It was transformation, choosing to build something different from what he'd inherited. 3 weeks after Tyler's arrest, Julian and I sat in the garden as autumn deepened around us. "Our 6-month contract ends in 3 months, he said carefully. "We should discuss terms." My heart clenched. "What terms?" He turned to face me fully, taking both my hands. "I don't want an annulment. I want this marriage to be real, if you do. No contract, no expiration date, just us choosing each other." The vulnerability in his eyes undid me completely. "I want that too. But I need one thing. Name it. Equal partnership. Decisions we make together, problems we face together. No more protecting me from information because you think it's safer." Julian nodded without hesitation. "I can do that. Will do that." I kissed him, pouring every complicated emotion of the past months into the contact. When we broke apart, both smiling, the future felt less like an uncertainty and more like a promise. Nina gave birth to a healthy daughter that winter, with Marco crying happy tears in the delivery room, and me documenting everything despite her protests. Julian and I stood as godparents, holding the tiny bundle and making silent vows to build a world where she'd grow up safer than we had. Life wasn't perfect. Julian still carried the weight of past choices, and I still woke from nightmares where Tyler's grip wouldn't release. But we carried those burdens together, learning daily how to be partners rather than protectors and protected. The mansion became home, the marriage became real, and somehow, from the worst night of my life, I'd found my way to something worth keeping. The trial happened in spring, 6 months after Tyler's arrest. I sat in the gallery beside Julian, watching prosecutors dismantle every lie Tyler had constructed. His lawyer attempted damage control, painting him as a devoted officer led astray by obsession. But the evidence was overwhelming. Recordings of his collaboration with the Sawyers, documentation of extortion, testimony from victims he'd threatened over the years. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. As guards led him away, Tyler looked back once. Not at me. At Julian. Expression twisted with impotent rage. I felt nothing watching him disappear through the courthouse doors. No satisfaction, no closure, just the quiet recognition that this chapter had finally ended. Outside, reporters clustered on the steps, shouting questions about my relationship with Tyler, about Julian's alleged criminal connections. Victor and Marco formed a barrier as we descended, Julian's hand steady at the small of my back. We said nothing, climbing into the car as cameras flashed. "How do you feel?" Julian asked once we were moving. I considered the question honestly. Tired, relieved, ready to move forward. He squeezed my hand. "Then that's what we'll do." The business transformation continued steadily. Julian brought me deeper into operations, not just the financial side, but strategic planning. We hired a new operations manager, restructured shipping contracts to eliminate anything questionable, invested in community programs that built goodwill and reduced tensions with neighboring territories. It wasn't charity, it was smart business, creating stability that benefited everyone. I officially became a partner in Cross Logistics, the umbrella company for legitimate enterprises. My first major decision was implementing a profit-sharing program for long-term employees. Julian supported it despite resistance from older members of the organization who saw it as weakness. Loyalty comes from respect, not fear, I argued during a tense meeting with his inner circle. You want people invested in success. You give them stake in the outcome. Victor nodded slowly. She's right. Times are changing. We adapt or we're replaced. The program launched in summer. Employee satisfaction increased, turnover dropped, efficiency improved. Small victories, but they added up to fundamental shift in how the business operated. Nina and Marco moved into a house 3 blocks from the mansion, close enough for frequent dinners, but far enough for independence. Their daughter, Sophia, grew from newborn to smiling, babbling presence in all our lives. Watching Julian hold her, patient and gentle, showed me sides of him I'd only glimpsed before. "You're good with her," I observed one evening as he coaxed Sophia to sleep in his arms. "Kids are honest," he replied softly. "They don't care about reputation or power. Makes them easier to understand than adults. Do you want children?" The question slipped out before I could second-guess it. His gaze found mine over Sophia's sleeping form. "Someday, maybe. If you do. Someday," I agreed, stomach fluttering at the possibility. As autumn returned, marking a year since that rainy night I'd stumbled into Julian's territory, we threw a party to celebrate Nina's birthday. The mansion filled with people, employees who'd become friends, neighbors, even a few of Julian's business associates who'd proven trustworthy. Music drifted through open windows, laughter echoing off high ceilings. I found Julian on the terrace, watching the celebration from a distance. "Hiding from your own party?" "Observing," he corrected, pulling me against his side. "Making sure everyone's having a good time." "They are, so should you." I tilted my head to study him. "What are you really thinking about?" He was quiet for a moment. "A year ago I was going through motions, running the business, maintaining control but not really living. Then you appeared, terrified and desperate, and everything changed. You saved me." I said simply. You saved me back. His arms tightened around my waist, gave me reason to become someone better than I was. You were always that person. You just needed permission to show it. Inside, Nina's laughter rang out as Marco presented her birthday cake, candles blazing. Friends surrounded them, faces warm with genuine affection. It was so far from the isolation I'd felt a year ago, from the fear that had consumed every moment. I need to tell you something, Julian said, turning me to face him fully. I've been offered a seat on the city's Economic Development Council. It's a legitimate position, chance to influence policy, build connections outside the usual networks. I blinked in surprise. That's incredible. Why do you sound uncertain? Because it means public scrutiny, media attention, questions about my past. His jaw tightened. Questions about you, too. I won't accept if it puts you at risk. I cupped his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. We faced worse than reporters. If this is what you want, take it. We'll handle whatever comes. Relief softened his features. You're sure? Absolutely. I kissed him, tasting promise and possibility. Besides, I'm pretty good at managing difficult situations now. Learned from the best. He laughed, the sound rare and genuine. We stood there as the party continued behind us, city lights spreading below like scattered stars. Peace settled over me, the kind that comes from knowing exactly where you belong. The council position started in November. Julian navigated political waters with the same strategic precision he applied to business, building alliances, identifying leverage points, pushing initiatives that benefited the community while serving his interests. I attended functions at his side, learning to deflect invasive questions with polite firmness, representing the cross name with confidence I'd never imagined possessing. One reporter cornered me at a charity gala, asking pointed questions about my relationship with Tyler, about Julian's alleged criminal past. I met her gaze directly. Tyler Brennan is serving 15 years for corruption and conspiracy. My husband runs legitimate businesses and serves his community. If you have specific accusations, make them. Otherwise, focus on tonight's cause. Julian found me afterward, pride clear in his expression. You handled that perfectly. I'm learning from you, I teased. How to command a room without raising your voice. You always had that ability. You just needed to trust it. Winter brought news that stunned everyone. The federal government was investigating the remaining Sawyer operations, and prosecutors wanted Julian to testify about their territorial activities. It was a delicate balance, cooperation that demonstrated good faith without exposing cross-business to unnecessary scrutiny. We spent long nights with lawyers, carefully crafting testimony that was truthful without being damaging. Julian testified for 6 hours, answering questions with measured precision. The Sawyer prosecution resulted in additional convictions, effectively dismantling what remained of their organization. The aftermath brought unexpected peace. Without the Sawyers pressing boundaries, territorial conflicts decreased dramatically. Julian consolidated control not through violence, but through economic dominance, offering better terms, more reliable service, treating people fairly. It wasn't the empire his father built, but it was more sustainable. On our first wedding anniversary, we returned to the courthouse where we'd married. Same tired officiant, same sparse room. But this time, we wrote our own vows. I choose you, Julian said, voice steady. Not because of circumstances or contracts, but because you're the best decision I've ever made. I promise to be your partner, to trust you with truth, to build something worthy of us both. Tears blurred my vision as I spoke. I choose you too. You gave me safety when I needed it most, then gave me space to become myself. I promise to stand beside you, to challenge you when necessary, to love you through whatever comes. We exchanged new rings, simple gold bands engraved with the date we first met, not the date we'd married. Nina cried through the whole ceremony. Victor actually smiled, rare and genuine. The small reception afterward felt more real than any grand celebration could have been. Just the people who mattered most, sharing a meal and stories, laughing about how far we'd all come. As evening fell, Julian and I retreated to the mansion's covered veranda. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, distant thunder promising rain. I used to hate storms, I admitted. watching lightning flicker. After that night, they reminded me of running, of fear. Julian wrapped his arms around me from behind. And now they remind me of you, of how sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. I leaned back against his chest. That storm brought me to you. It brought me everything. He murmured against my hair. My life was empty before you. I just didn't realize it. The first drops of rain began to fall. Soft patters against leaves and stone. We stood there together, watching the storm roll in, no longer afraid of what it might bring. The city stretched before us, lights beginning to glow in the gathering dusk. Somewhere out there, people were building lives, facing fears, finding their own unexpected salvations. What do you think happens next? I asked. Julian's arms tightened around me. Whatever we want. That's the beauty of choosing each other. We get to decide the rest. I turned in his embrace, capturing his mouth in a kiss that tasted of rain and promises kept. Behind us, the mansion glowed warm against the darkening sky. Inside, Nina's laughter drifted out, Sophia's delighted squeals mixing with Marco's deeper chuckles. It was the sound of family, of home, of lives rebuilt from broken pieces. The rain fell harder now, drumming against the roof, washing streets clean. I remembered that desperate sprint through darkness, terror driving every step, not knowing where I was running or who would answer when I pounded on that warehouse door. If someone had told me then that my salvation would come from the most unlikely source, that fear would transform into love, that survival would become thriving, I wouldn't have believed them. But standing in Julian's arms as the storm raged around us, I understood something fundamental. Sometimes the worst nights of our lives are just the beginning. Sometimes running through the rain leads you exactly where you need to be. Sometimes the person who saves you is the one you save in return. I love you, I said, the words coming easy now. I love you too. Julian kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. Always. The storm continued its symphony, but we barely noticed. We had each other. We had family. We had a future we'd fought to build. The rain that once terrified me now felt like blessing, washing away everything that came before, leaving only what mattered. This moment, this man, this life we'd chosen together, and it was more than I'd ever dared to hope for.